Let's make one thing clear here, fighting games are worth it.
Blazing, to my heart is blazing. If the word kill me, I don't need a new word order.
They're one of the rare genres where truly cutting-edge graphics perfectly mesh with intricate and intense game mechanics. Their rosters are filled with some of the coolest, most exquisite and diverse characters in all of video games, and of the many kinds of esports out there, fighting games are undoubtedly the most hype. But chances are if you're watching this video, you think differently. You think fighting games are only for the most hardcore of players.
Yeah, they look cool, but it just isn't for me, man.
And I can't really blame you for feeling that way. After all, a majority of the gaming press have completely written them off as lesser games meant for only a certain subsect of people. No, seriously, think about it. Have you ever seen a traditional fighting game nominated for a Game of the Year award? The answer is no, since they don't have a bloated 40-hour single-player campaign that reaches the arbitrary threshold for award-worthiness. Instead, they're relegated to the shadow realm of their own category, having to stand alongside games that have been released years prior and garbage arena fighters that shouldn't be nominated for any awards to begin with. Well, I'm here to tell you that those game journals are wrong. You too can have fun with fighting games. I know this because I am one of you. At best, I can be considered relatively average at fighting games I've put a little time into. And that's why I'm making this video, to prove that someone even as painfully average as me can participate in one of the most storied and important genres in all of video games. But let me set expectations right now. This video is not titled How to Get Good at Fighting Games. This guide will not tell you how to get to Celestial or Platinum rank or how to get to top 16 at EVO or any other tournament for that matter. What this guide will teach you is the meat and potatoes of understanding fighting games and the bare basics of what you need to know in order to go online, win some games, and have some fun. And let me also say that if you're interested in getting into fighting games, then you're in luck. There's no better time to hop into the scene than right now. In the last 5 years or so, fighting games have made more of an active effort towards keeping the novice player in mind. Not to mention, all contemporary fighting games feel and play great on a regular gamepad, so no need to worry about buying and learning an arcade stick. Because of this, I'll mainly be using the most recent AAA fighting game release, Guilty Gear Strive, for demonstration purposes, as it serves as an excellent example of a game offering tools and guidance to help new players along. However, my advice on how to go about learning a game will be general enough to apply to any particular fighter that catches your fancy. The first thing you're going to want to do when you start to learn a fighting game is to head into training mode and pick a character. I know depending on the game that the size of the roster can be really intimidating, but you shouldn't overthink it. Scroll through the cast and find a character that speaks to you, be it their design, personality, whatever. The character designs typically reflect the kinds of playstyle a character has too. Strive does the work for you in this case. Scrolling over each character shows you the type of fighter they are, along with how difficult they are to play. But just in case you aren't sure, let's run through the major archetypes you'll find in any fighting game. You have your Shotos, a typical jack-of-all-trades type character. They got projectiles, reversals, all the classic tools, and a simple, honest game plan. Great to learn fighting games with. Rushdown characters are much more offensive, focusing on overwhelming the opponent with fast attacks and mix-ups. Zoners are the opposite, trying to instead play keep away from the opponent, and are typically most dangerous at full screen. Puppet characters are ones that require you to command 2 or more characters at a time. These are difficult to pick up, but can be really rewarding to master as they are really hard to fight against. And grapplers are slow, big, and can't really get in for scraps, but when they do, they basically take the round. Of course, there are even more character archetypes than this, but at least knowing a few of the types of kinds of characters out there makes it a bit easier to narrow down on the characters you'd like to play. Now, unless you're trying to take a fighting game seriously, you really don't need to specialize in a main. So pick out a few members of the cast and see if you like how they play. Personally, I took to Mei right away in Strive, mainly because she's cute as fuck, mainly because of her big normals and extreme dolphin pressure. Speaking on that, now that we're actually in training mode, and hey, what are you doing? Stop mashing buttons! Okay, tip number 1 to how to not be bad, cut this shit out. Mashing buttons in any other game genre doesn't work, so why do you expect it'll work here? You don't pull up CSGO and start freaking the fuck out of the keys the second you spot an enemy. I don't know what it is about fighting games that devolves the brain to a primal Neanderthal state that can do nothing but perform the in-game equivalent of flailing your arms around like a wacky inflatable balloon man. Stop mashing buttons and be conscious about your inputs. Congratulations, you are now 30% better at fighting games. In fighting games, you are primarily focused on controlling two main elements on a character, their movement and their attacks. Now, the movement, how attacks feel, and how they combo into one another will vary differently in any fighting game you play. However, the beauty of the genre is core theory and fundamentals carry over to every game, making it easier to get into other fighting games the more you play them. Strive is classified as an anime fighter, meaning that it has a lot of movement options, like air and ground dashes, and uses 5 buttons. Each of the 5 moves, punch, kick, slash, heavy slash, and dust, increase in power while decrease in speed. That's the trade-off. Typically, the harder hitting the move, the slower and easier it is to block or counter. Think of a character's move list as tools in a toolbox. There's a right tool for everything, and you can't use a hammer when you need to use a wrench. You see what I'm saying? For example, any move that a character performs where they attack upwards from the ground is referred to as an anti-air, for knocking players out of the sky, so make sure to know what is best for your character. The standing, crouching, jumping, command normals, and special attacks all have different properties that make them useful in some situations over others, and learning those will come with a bit of practice and time. But speaking of special attacks, I think it's time we address every Smash player's worst nightmare: motion inputs. In case you've never played a fighting game before, a motion input involves special moves being performed by pressing specific directions on the D-pad or analog stick along with a button. For example, Kai's fast lightning bolt is shut out by pressing down, down forward, and forward and slash. The difficulty of motion inputs is extremely overhyped, mostly because no one ever explains the timing of them. You want to input the motion and then press the button right after the motion is finished. Quarter circles, half circles, charges, and the Dragon Punch inputs are the most common amongst fighting games. The DP motion especially seems to trip people up. However, if you know how to do a quarter circle motion, you can do a DP too. Just press forward before starting the quarter circle input, then press the button after that diagonal press. Motion inputs are like learning to ride a bike. Once you internalize how the input is timed and clean up your sloppy movement, you'll be throwing lightning bolts and Potemkin bustering like a pro. And those special moves are the most versatile in any character's arsenal too, so being able to input them like it's second nature is going to be a huge boon to your gameplay. But I've been talking way too much, it's time to head online. You know, whenever a fighting game comes out, it tends to get lambasted for a lack of content, and I always loathe that, as the content is not stupid nonsense single player modes, it's actually playing online with other people. You can learn the controls in training mode, but you can't learn the game in training mode. That comes with getting your fucking hands dirty and hopping online against some real human beings. Unlike most other competitive multiplayer games, there's no team-based component to the matches. All the games are won and lost off you and you alone. But once you get that win, and I'm not talking taking a round off someone, or even a game, but when you take a set from someone for the first time online, the emotional heights you will be taken to will soar to reach even some of gaming's most powerful narrative moments. Now, how much your ass gets beat online is really going to depend on the game you're playing. If you're playing a contemporary fighting game, there's a better chance to be matched up with other players similar to your skill level and rank, whereas trying to learn an old school fighter, say over Parsec or Fightcade, will face a lot more hardships. When actually playing fighting games against real people, you kind of have to think about them almost like turn-based RPGs. Each round starts in a state known as the neutral, where neither player is actively blocking or taking damage. The flip side of the neutral is what I refer to as advantageous and disadvantageous situations. Basically, any scenario where you have more options than your opponent is an advantageous situation, and vice versa. For example, being knocked down on the ground is always a disadvantageous situation, as waking up only allows you a small handful of options, while your opponent could come at you from a variety of ways. They could attack high, low, overhead, throw you, or beta reversal. This concept of mixing up your opponent while they're knocked down is known as okizeme, and being able to successfully trick and mix up your opponent, as well as not getting mixed up by them, is integral to being able to get wins online. Though a beginner's trap I see a lot of novice fighting game players fall into is getting continually pummeled on wake up over and over again simply because they aren't blocking. When your opponent has the advantage, it's really important to respect any moves they try and throw out, mainly via blocking them. A lot of new players tend to mash buttons on wake up, which leads to them getting bodied over and over again by their opponents. Just blocking when you know you can't throw anything out will help you avoid your opponent netting free damage on you. Blocking isn't always the right answer though. Fighting games feature a loose rock, paper, scissors-esque system with attacks, blocks, and throws. Blocks deflect attacks, throws go through blocks, and attacks beat throws. By predicting what your opponent's going to do, you can either reset the match to neutral or outright steal their turn and start putting the pressure on. Obviously, you'll be in all three of these advantageous, disadvantageous, and neutral situations numerous times throughout a match, and the intricacies of what bets to do in all three of these will come with practice in playing the game more. But if you're calm on the stick, know when to respect your opponent as well as when to go on the offensive, and how to utilize your moveset well, you'll realize fighting games aren't as crazy difficult as initially thought. Now obviously there is way more to learn, and this base level of knowledge will only get you so far. There's just going to be some days you hop online and go 0-37 against Leo or win 2 games all night, and don't let that discourage you. Losing is just as much a part of the experience as winning is, and reflecting on mistakes allows you to correct them for future matches. And that's called improvement, baby! Since we live in the internet age, basically any single fighting game you'd want to play has multiple guides available on YouTube and elsewhere online that are really in-depth and can help you understand your game of choice more intricate individual systems. On top of just general game-specific guides, you can also look up character-specific guides as well, which are filled with great information on their strengths, weaknesses, along with best practices you should incorporate into their playstyles. Speaking of character-specific information, 3 important things you should learn when trying to improve with the character are 2 simple bread and butter combos, as well as a combo that confirms into a super meter move. Similar to motion inputs, there seems to be a lot of fear online over crazy long combos. Depending on the game you're playing, the combos you're doing might not even be that long in the first place. Even so, the purpose of your bread and butters is to be short, simple combos that put you in a good situation, which is why I recommend finding the simple stuff to practice at first. For example, when I learned May and Strive, my primary bread and butter was crouching slash into Dolphin. It's only a 2-hit combo, but the extra damage adds up over time, and being able to consistently hit confirm small combo strings together in matches is key to getting better at the game and winning online. As for hit confirming into a super, in most instances, just throwing out a raw super will result in getting blocked and punished. That's why you'll want to learn what moves you're able to perform that allow you to combo into the super, guaranteeing damage. Being able to do this is key as it can help you completely save rounds and make for great hype comebacks. Again, it's important to start with learning and getting good at the simple stuff, and then slowly starting to implement the more complex elements. Don't feel pressured by the amount of systems and mechanics fighting games featured. Strive has an excellent mission mode, which basically teaches the player everything they need to know about Guilty Gear. Anytime you boot up the game, knock out a handful of the missions, and then hop online and try to implement what you learned. The more you play online, the better you'll become. And look, you didn't have to slave away for tens of hours in training mode either in order to do it. I've given you enough tips and tricks to keep in mind when starting to learn a new fighting game, but reminder that I'm still a novice too. So to wrap up, here's a few resources that not only helped me out when I was picking up new games, but also if you want to keep on improving. First and foremost, glossary.infil.net is an amazing website that explains any fighting game term you could possibly encounter while learning a game or watching a tournament, along with the game or game that term is relevant for. The Super Couch Fighters The Dojo Road to Evo is an older but nonetheless great video series explaining some of the more complex things to learn in order to become good at fighting games, such as zoning, footsies, how to read your opponent, and such. The Dust Loop Wiki is great for understanding the mechanics and characters of the many excellent fighters from Arc System Works, and as always, Google is your best friend. So get up and get out there, pick up a fighting game that looks interesting to you and give it a try. I hope you use this video as a springboard into exploring the greater world of fighting games, and I hope I have given you a good idea of how to not get caught up in beginner pitfalls so you can focus on what's most important in any video game: having fun. Hey, thanks so much for watching our video on how to enjoy fighting games. If you learned something from this video and want to see more like it, make sure to give this video a thumbs up as well as to leave a comment to appease the YouTube elder gods. And in the meantime, make sure to check out some of our older content such as reviews, guides, and other equally based gaming content right here on Turnstile. Take care.